Welcome to Mindful with Minaa, where we explore how mindfulness can enhance your relationships and well-being. I'm your host, Minaa B, a licensed social worker, mental health educator, and author. Through insightful discussions, I will guide you towards self-awareness and self-efficacy, empowering you to effectively manage your relationships, reduce burnout, and be more present with yourself. So let's jump into today's episode. What's up, Mindful community? Welcome back to another episode. I am going to be talking about a shift that I am experiencing in my life as of lately, and I actually was inspired to record this episode because of something that I shared on the internet about a few weeks ago that I have gotten a lot of feedback on. And one of the things that I shared on Threads recently was me talking about how I have been experiencing something called work resistance. And believe it or not, I am in a place where I am considering leaving the mental health industry. And none of that is set in stone. But one of the things that I have been feeling in the last few years is just this resistance to the work that I have been doing, or at least the way that I have been doing this work. I started out as a content creator literally 10 years ago. Back in 2014, that is when I graduated with my master's from NYU in social work. And I remember around that year, that is when I started a blog called Respect Your Struggle. And the whole purpose of that blog was to write about different mental health related struggles that people experienced and things that I experienced in my own life, but also things that I helped my clients overcome. And I started this blog to give people an opportunity to cultivate a sense of belonging and community through shared experiences and being open about the struggles and the different forms of adversity that we all faced. And so literally since then, I have been on this journey of utilizing social media and the internet to destigmatize mental health. And Instagram is my number one platform. It is my largest platform. And it is actually the platform that I am starting to have a very difficult relationship with. I appreciate that through Instagram, I have been able to own a business, but more so sustain a business and leave my full-time job and really find my footing and have the ability to be grounded as an entrepreneur. But I also know over the last 10 years, Instagram has changed drastically, especially when you are a content creator and you're not utilizing these apps for pleasure or your own enjoyment to stay in contact with friends and family and see what they're doing. When you're utilizing it from a business lens, you are more privy to the things that are happening and your eyes are open to subtle changes that maybe the average user won't pick up on, because you're not utilizing Instagram as a way to make money and you're not utilizing Instagram as a way to grow a business. But when you are utilizing these platforms in that way, you start to see a shift in the online culture. And that is where I am. I know that I am seeing a shift in social media. I'm seeing a shift in how Instagram operates, and I am very close to pulling the plug. I have not done it yet because it feels so weird. Like I've been on this app for so long, but I do know that I am in a space where I want to try new things. And the point of today's episode is really to learn how to embrace the pivot and normalize changing your mind, normalize quitting as a practice of self-love and self-discovery, and being able to give yourself permission to literally do something new. So earlier you heard me say that I have been considering quitting the mental health industry, and what the heck does that even mean? So to be honest, y'all, I don't even know what that means for myself. I am in a transitional state right now where I know what I'm doing right now no longer feels fitting for me. It no longer brings me joy. It no longer feels like something that I am grounded in. And the work resistance that I'm talking about, part of it is burnout because I have been going and going and going ever since I quit my job back in 2020 and became a full-time entrepreneur. I realized how difficult entrepreneurship is, and sometimes feeling like I'm working harder as an entrepreneur than I was when I was just working full time and working 40-hour weeks. So that is something that I do know has played a role in me wanting something new for myself, the burnout and just the desire to have more space for resting and nourishing my well being through rest. But I also know this resistance isn't 100% burnout. I know this resistance just has to do with 10 years of pretty much engaging in the same practice and having a strong desire to enter into a new realm, to build a new platform, to do something new for myself. I turned 34 in March, and I do think that this new chapter of my life is also playing a role in my desire to do things differently because I've only been in my 30s for 4 years. But I will say that the woman that I was when I was in my 20s was the woman who was planting the seed and tending to the soil. And now, at 34 years old, I am seeing all of my hard work finally flourish. I am finally in a place where I can eat the fruit of what I harvested. I am finally in a place where I can literally pick from the tree and see the abundance overflowing. And that is such a beautiful place to be in. But what I am also realizing is there's another patch of land that needs tending to, that is yearning for me to water it. And right now, I think that because I spent so much of my life and so much of my 20s building and tending to the soil and planting those seeds, and I can finally see what I'm capable of. I'm capable of building things. I'm capable of growing things. I'm capable of tending to the soil. I'm capable of tending to the seeds that I planted. And that has cultivated so much inner trust that has allowed me to love myself even deeper. And I want to take these gardening tools and run with it and tend to the rest of this open land that I feel is in front of me and say, what are these new seeds that I am going to plant this year? And the thought of that leaves me with so much excitement because, one, I trust in my abilities to start new things. And two, I trust that even if I tend to the soil and nothing grows, just the act of trying, the act of pivoting, and the act of trusting myself enough to do something differently plays a role in my emotional resiliency and continues to allow me to evolve as a person. Because life is all about figuring out what works for you. And there are going to be times where we're planting seeds and tending to the soil and we realize this thing grew and I actually don't want to pick this fruit. Or this thing grew into something that I don't want to sustain and maintain anymore. These trees are growing and growing and the garden is flourishing, but it's flourishing to an extent that I can't sustain anymore. And maybe I want to downsize. And that is where I'm at in my life when I say the idea of quitting mental health. It's not really me saying, I never want to talk about mental health. I'm abandoning this podcast. I'm not going to write any more books about mental health. That is not what I mean. What I mean is I want to quit doing the things that I've always been doing for the last 10 to 15 years. I want to give myself an ability to try something new and feel free in that. I want to give myself the ability to say, I don't want to do that. And that's okay. So to say I know what my next phase of life is going to look like, I have absolutely no idea. But What I will say is, to get to where I am trying to go, I have decided that I want to open myself up to new experiences. I want to engage in different forms of play. I really want to tap back into who I was in my early 20s when I was working hard and going to school, but I still found time to sustain myself through self care. I want to do things like explore new restaurants, go to new museums, travel to new places, take pottery classes, try a new gym, buy a new plant, literally taking in the world so that I can figure out, what does this new phase of my life look like? What does 34-year-old Minaa want for herself? Because 24-year-old Minaa wanted something different. At 24, I was graduating with a master's degree. At 24, I was hell-bent on entering the mental health industry through a certain lens and through a certain perspective of seeing clients and doing certain things. And the first major pivot that I ever experienced away from that was in 2020 when I quit my job. And that is when I stopped seeing clients one-on-one and decided to grow my business. I never thought I would have done that. It was a desire, it was a dream, but it was so shocking when I finally said to myself, I quit this job and I'm going to actually submit my resignation letter and I'm never looking back. And that's exactly what I did. And so now I'm asking myself, what do I want to resign from? And I know one of the things that I want to resign from is this feeling that my worth and value as a creator, not as a person, specifically as a creator, feeling as if my worth and value and my professional value is tied to what I give the internet, specifically tied to what I give to social media. And that is something that 34-year-old Minaa has to now process and pick apart, because this is something that I've been doing for 10 years. For 10 years, as a content creator and as a professional, I have been utilizing these platforms as a way to grow. But I want to do things differently now. I don't want everything and all of my being to be tied to all of these social media platforms. And so, like I said, you're still going to see me post and you're still going to see me on these apps, but I want to show up differently and I want to engage in joy, in fulfillment by giving myself permission to do things new. And so I don't know if there are some of you who are listening to this that can relate. I know when I shared my comment on Threads about me wanting to pivot and try a new industry and do something new, I got so many responses, more than I even thought. I honestly just thought I was sharing something online that maybe 2 to 3 people would like and just scroll past. I was very taken aback by the influx of comments I received, even the text messages and DMs from people who are like, Minaa, I am in this same boat. Like, I am in a place of wanting to do things differently, but just not knowing how to, but also wanting to give myself permission to do things differently and trying to figure out, how do I normalize that? And so my advice to you is, or I would say my question to you is, what does it look like for you to embrace the pivot? What does it look like for you to normalize moving on from things? The biggest part of pivoting and trying something new is engaging in self-reflection and being honest with yourself about what truly brings you joy and fulfillment. It also requires you to ask yourself, am I living for me or am I living for other people? Am I living for myself or do I feel like I have to sustain who I have always been, even though I am ready for a new trajectory? Sometimes we stay stuck in fields of work, we stay stuck in relationships, we stay stuck in experiences and circumstances, not because we want to be there, but because we are afraid of embarrassment. We don't want people to know that this 5-year relationship that I invested all of my time and energy into, that I posted about and celebrated and talked about all the time, it's over. It came to an end. Sometimes we don't want people to know that despite all of the accolades And all of the job promotions, I'm actually miserable and unhappy, and I don't want to do this anymore. We often stay stuck in things because we don't realize how conditioned we have been to value the opinions of other people before our own. We don't realize that a lot of the time we are living for other people to be comfortable, and this whole time we have been uncomfortable. A promise that I made to myself this year is something that I think a lot of people might call an act of selfishness. I, however, call it an act of self-preservation and an act of self-love. And the promise that I made to myself is that I am no longer choosing discomfort in order to make other people comfortable. In relationships, compromise and flexibility is important for the growth and the sustainment of that relationship. But another thing that we have to realize as people is that there are going to be times where we have needs and other people have needs and desires, and there is no middle ground. It's either I'm going to choose my needs and disappoint you, or I'm going to choose your needs and disappoint myself. And I'm no longer disappointing myself because I've done that too much in my life. I have given up too much of myself to please other people, to make other people happy, to give other people the things that they want while I sat and suffered. And a big part of embracing this pivot in my life is giving myself permission to say, I deserve this thing even when it makes you upset. I deserve this thing even when it disappoints you. And so this concept of quitting and embracing change isn't just work related. This can also trickle into other areas of our lives. And I believe that pivoting can sometimes derail other people because they're on the same path as you. And when you decide to make a detour, they're like, well, I thought we were going in the same direction. And you're like, well, actually, I changed my mind. So can you sustain being on this walk with me despite knowing I'm going in a different direction from you? Can we still love each other? Can we still support each other? Can we still provide each other with reciprocity, but also deal with the difficult emotions that arise when I make the choice to choose myself? And that is a big part of the shift that I am experiencing right now in this new chapter of my life, being a 34-year-old woman. I am no longer living my life to please other people, but I am also willing to disappoint old Minaa. Because maybe the person that I was 3 years ago wanted something different, and that's why this resistance is there, because I'm still trying to live up to the expectations that I placed on myself. And so now I am in a season where I might have to say, girl, these are the things that you thought you wanted. Or maybe these are the things that you want, but you're not willing to do the work of getting it. And because of that, you're going to have to grieve. You are going to have to feel sadness. You are going to have to feel all of the difficult emotions that arise in the midst of realizing I'm not willing to do this thing anymore. I'm not willing to do it for other people. And I'm also not willing to do it for myself. And so as I share all of this, I want you to think about the multiple paths that exist in front of you, because too often in life, people struggle with thinking that there is literally only one path, one road ahead, and if I don't take this road, every other street leads to a dead end. That is not true. There are multiple paths in front of us that have the ability to lead us to the thing that we want out of life. It is not a one-way road ahead of you. And so how can you embrace taking a new direction, enjoying the scenery, taking in all of the things that you discover about yourself, that you discover about the world, that you discover about the relationships you exist in to get to where you are trying to go? And so I am on a journey right now of documenting and giving myself permission to take new roads, to try new things, to embrace newness, and recognize that quitting is actually healthy. Trying to stay in something that's not working for you is more detrimental for your well-being then recognizing it's time for me to cut my ties and move on. It is time for me to tether this soul tie from a person, from the thing, from the job, from whatever it is, and deal with the grief of letting go rather than dealing with the pain of staying. And what I know for myself in this season that I am currently in is that I would rather deal with the grief of letting go so that I can immerse myself in the experience of trying something new and embracing change. And I'm curious to know if you will join me on that experience if you too are in a space where you need to pivot and let go of something or even someone. And so before I wrap, I just want to remind you that embracing new possibilities and allowing yourself to be immersed in the newness of life and seeing what life has to offer plays a role in our growth and evolution as people. Let go of the fear of judgment or the perceptions that you think people are going to have of you, because how you choose to live your life is literally no one else's business. And the greatest gift that you can give yourself is the gift of letting go when it's time to move on from something. That's all for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed what you just listened to, please take a moment to rate and review this podcast on your preferred platform. Also, don't forget to share it with a friend and on social media. To stay connected with me and my work, follow me on social media and subscribe to the Mindful with Mina newsletter, which can be found on my website, www.minab.com. You can also continue learning from me by ordering my book, Owning Our Struggles, which is available at all major book retailers. Stay tuned for a new episode next week, and most importantly, remember to be present and stay mindful. Take care and goodbye for now.